I have exciting news. I ordered some new baby chicks, and I just got a notification that they have shipped, so they should be here about tomorrow. You may have seen in some of my other videos that I got a bunch of hatching eggs, and in the first video I said that they weren't all for me, that they were going to go to a new home. Unfortunately, most of the eggs were infertile. So I got some chicks coming in instead, and again, same situation, they're not all for me, they're going to go to the new home, but I'm going to raise them up, and that's actually a really good way for you, if you enjoy taking care of chicks and raising them, to make extra money, because a lot of people don't enjoy raising them. So you can go ahead and offer it to people, and they could pay you or buy them from you if you raise them for them. I know, at least in my area, there's a lot of people that really like to find others that are willing to do it for them, so it's a good way to make extra money if you're into that. And I'm extremely lucky because the timing worked out perfectly. Honeysuckle is Broody, and you probably saw that in my other videos. If you haven't seen those, make sure you go check out my incubation series. But I'm going to set some things up tonight so that way when the chicks arrive, I can give them to her tomorrow and see if they bond. I'll show you how to do that if you have a broody hen. And that will just make everything so much easier for me if she takes care of them, because look how broody she is. She wants all the eggs. So in order to keep her broody and to help encourage her to bond with the chicks when I give them to her, I have given her an egg to keep so that she can keep sitting on it, so that should help. You can use a real egg or you can use a fake egg. If you don't have a broody hen, you could just get something like this from Walmart, just a nice storage bin. This one was outside because I was keeping bags of fertilizer in it. Now it's empty. I'm going to go ahead and clean it out as a backup just in case she and the chicks don't bond, so that way I can put them in here. So always be prepared with a backup plan. So we're going to clean this one out. You can get these at Walmart. You can get them on Amazon. Or you could go to your local feed store and get a big Rubbermaid tub, but those are going to be more expensive. So if you're looking for an economical way to do it, I highly recommend a nice storage bin. But for plan A, I'm hoping that I can put them in here with my Silky. Because I can't have them loose in here with the other chickens. Because one, the chicks are going to be so tiny that they could squeeze through here and get lost or hurt. And plus, the rest of these girls are not broody, so you don't know if they're really going to be nice to the chicks or not. And make sure you subscribe, because I'll go ahead and show you videos on how to introduce new birds to the flock when the time comes. Obviously, it's going to be a few weeks before they're old enough to join all of them. So I'm going to have my Silky and the chicks in here, so that way they can still be around and see the other chickens, so they're used to each other's presence. They'll be protected. This is just an old rabbit hutch that I got from the Amish. I lined the bottom of the indoor part with this, and I'm going to put shavings on top of this, and that'll make the cleanup really easy, because then when it's time to change the shavings, I just have to roll this feed bag up with the shavings in it, throw the whole thing away, put a new feed bag down, and put new shavings on. So here's my pine shavings. Pine shavings work really well because it's nice and soft, so it's comfortable for the chicks and for your hen if you're using a broody hen. And the pine really helps cover up the smell. And I do recommend cleaning this out every day. All right, so that's ready. Now I'm going to go clean out the bin and get that set up just in case I have to put them in that as a backup plan. It's always better to be prepared ahead of time, so that way when the chicks arrive, you can instantly put them into something safe, warm, clean, and comfortable. And then you can get them warmed up, hydrated, and fed, and they don't have to wait any longer, because shipping is stressful enough. And I do have a backup lamp and bulb and also a heat plate for chicks. You could use either. I have those just in case they don't bond with the hen, so that way I still can have an instant heat source for them. I also have chick feed, electrolytes, probiotics, and all the supplies I need, so I'm going to go get that ready. Obviously, I'm not going to mix up the water and the electrolytes and the probiotics until they arrive. That way it's fresh for them. But I'm at least going to get the feed ready. Okay, Honeysuckle, you're going to be a mom tomorrow. Your dreams are going to come true. She's raised one chick before in the past, and she did a pretty good job, so I think it'll go well. I do have to work tomorrow, so I'm going to have my phone on me. That way when the post office calls, I'll be able to go get them, take a break from work, pick up the chicks. And luckily where I work, we do get in and we sell baby chicks. So we already have all the Rubbermaid tubs there set up. That way I can go ahead and put them in there, in the back, in case they show up before it's time for me to get home. And then when it's time to get off work, I'll just box them up, take them home, and give them to my Silky. Monkey, give me a hug. Are you excited for the chickens, Monkey? Like I said earlier, make sure you check out my incubation series if you have not already seen it. Here is the lone surviving egg, because like I said, most of them were either infertile or had some shell imperfections and did not go full term. So this one's supposed to hatch late this week, so if it does, I'll put it with the new chicks I'm getting and the Silky, so that way it's not lonely. And it's day 18, by the way, so the incubator's on lockdown. We don't have to turn it anymore. We increase the humidity. And now the chick inside of the shell is going to work on getting into position so it can hatch in a couple days. So I've talked about this in some other videos, but one of my favorite brands of chicken feed is Nutrina. I really like how the ingredients with Nutrina are always consistent, and I really like the nature-wise blend of their feed, because with the layer feed at least, which is what I use for my adult hens, it has probiotics, prebiotics, it has essential oils, it has herbs, it has yucca root, it has yeast for extra protein. It just has all kinds of different stuff in it that's really healthy for your bird, and I've definitely noticed a difference ever since I switched to that. So of course I'm going to be using the nature-wise Nutrina for the chicks. And chicks need to be on a starter feed for at least 16 to 20 weeks. And around 16 to 20 weeks for most breeds is when they're going to start laying their first eggs. Their first eggs will be small. That's completely normal. They'll start to gain more size the more they lay. But you don't want to switch them to the layer feed any sooner than that, because the layer feed has more calcium in it and less protein than the baby feed has. And if you give them a lot of calcium before they start laying those eggs and when they're still young and growing, it's really going to hurt them. Their bones are going to be fragile, because too much calcium can actually do the opposite of what you would think, and it can make them really weak. They'll be stunted. They might not ever lay a normal sized egg. So you just really want to make sure that you're feeding them the baby feed, even though it's slightly more expensive. Stick with that until the time comes for them to start laying eggs. And then you can switch to the layer feed, which will be cheaper. It will be about 16% protein instead of 18%. And it will have more calcium in it to meet the needs for when they start laying eggs. Here's the guaranteed analysis on the Nutrina bag. And here's the ingredients. You can get a medicated or a non-medicated feed for your chicks. The medicated feed has Ameraucana in it. And contrary to popular belief, Ameraucana is not an antibiotic. It actually is a medication that prevents coccidiosis, which is a very harmful, potentially deadly parasitic disease. So it's not a bad idea to start them on the medicated feed when they're young. However, I have been told that ducklings and like guinea hens and baby pheasants cannot be on the medicated feed, because that medication for whatever reason just does not really agree with them. But for baby chickens, it's fine. If you want to go with non-medicated from the start, that's also okay. Do what you're comfortable with. Do what works best for you. I know lots of people have had success doing it that way, but I personally like to start off, at least for the first few weeks, on the medicated feed. Now you can buy small bags of these and 50-pound bags. Traditionally, the 50-pound bags are cheaper, and even if you only have a few chicks, trust me, you will go through the 50-pound bag, because like I said, they need to be on it for several months. I started off with a small bag this time just to make sure that they all show up alive. I didn't want to spend the money on a big bag if I end up getting a bad shipment of chicks. I'm just erring on the side of caution. But once they go through this bag, I'm going to go ahead with the 50s just because it's a lot cheaper. I know I'm going to need that much. And if you do go with the larger bags, I definitely recommend getting a big trash can to keep it in, to keep the pests out if you're storing it outside in the shed like I will be doing. We're going to go fill up the feeder now and make sure that they have access to feed at all times. This feeder is really nice because these little legs can come off of it. So when the chicks are young, you can take the legs off so that way it'll be close to the ground and they can reach it. And then as they grow, you can put the legs on to make it taller so they can't kick the shavings in there. All right, everything is ready. So we'll see how it goes tomorrow when they show up. I was at work and the post office called. The baby chicks are here, so I took my lunch break and came out to get them. Let's see how they look. They look good. We already have some bins set up at work because we sell chicks anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and get them settled in my office. And then when I get off work in a couple hours, I'll take them home and see if Honeysuckle wants to adopt them. They look really good, actually. All right, so the chicks showed up from Cackle Hatchery. I'm home now. I got them settled in at work, so they're doing really well. I'm gonna now see if my Silky, who's Broody, will accept them. All right, So I'll start with one just in case. We don't want things to get out of hand. I'll stick it under her so that way she thinks that it hatched from one of the eggs she's been sitting on. Do you notice you have a baby honeysuckle? Oh look, she's talking to it. So these little light-colored ones are splash Ameraucanas, and according to the hatchery, these are true Ameraucanas and not the Easter eggers. So they should grow up to lay blue eggs, which is exciting. And for anyone who's not familiar with the fact that chicks can be shipped, all baby chicks absorb their egg yolk when they hatch, and they won't have to eat or drink for up to 24 hours because that yolk that they absorb right before hatching will be able to sustain them. I love how poofy their cheeks are, look at that. And then these are the French black copper Marans. Look at the fuzzy legs, isn't that cute? This breed is famous for laying the really, really dark eggs that look like chocolate. And Cackle Hatchery actually sent me an extra one. All right, now I'm gonna go get their mama. You can hear her talking to them. So I didn't film the whole thing because it was way too confusing to film and make sure everyone was okay at the same time. But basically, they bonded in the nesting box. The chicks went right under her. They liked her. They wanted to follow her around. Honeysuckle really liked them too. But then when I moved them into the hutch so that way they could be together and have room to walk around and be loose and not worry about the other hens pecking them, Honeysuckle panicked. She kept trying to escape. And then when I let her out to see what she would do, she ran right back into the coop and went back into her nesting box and wanted to sit on all the eggs. Even after I removed the eggs, she kept looking for them. She was just obsessing over the eggs. So she's not the brightest chicken. She was more concerned about being in her nest because I guess that's where she associates her eggs and her babies with than taking care of these ones, even though when they were in the nesting box together, they all took to each other wonderfully. But when I moved them, she just panicked. Now, honestly, what I could have done is I could have put Honeysuckle in the separate hutch where I planned on raising these guys together a week or two before they arrived so she could get used to it. But I just didn't do it because Mimosa is my other Silky and she's the one that usually goes broody, and I've never had to do that with her before. With her, I would just show her a chick, and no matter where you put her, she would take care of it. So I just assumed it would be as easy as it always has been with Mimosa, but it was not. So I have them in here so that way they can eat and drink. I'm going to try to get Honeysuckle situated and comfortable. I'll try to reintroduce these guys tomorrow, but I'm not going to force it because even though she was very interested in the chicks, if she's going to be too distracted trying to get back to her nesting box, I can't risk anything happening to these guys, so it might not be worth it. But we'll see what happens. I'll give it one more try if I can get her comfortable in the hutch. So I'll go set her up with a nest and then we'll check back. And this is very temporary, by the way. If they don't end up bonding with Honeysuckle, I'm going to be putting them in a larger container than this. But we can go over some things to do when you first get your chicks. Make sure you inspect them when they first arrive. Make sure their eyes are clear, which this one's eyes are clear, but its little poofy cheeks are getting in the way. And then check their vents to make sure that they don't have pasty butt, which none of these do. They all look really good. But pasty butt happens when they get too cold, and then when they go to the bathroom, it doesn't come out all the way. And if it's left untreated, it could kill them. So they all look really good. And then when you first get them, I'm not going to do this because I've already done it with them, but you want to show them where their water is. So you would just gently dip their beak into the water. That way they can learn where to get their drinks from. Show them where their food is, and then just keep an eye on them to make sure they're settling in. The first thing I do when I get them is I let them warm up first under the heat lamp. And then I give them some warm water with a packet of the Save a Chick electrolytes and probiotics. It's 1 packet to a gallon of water. You want to use warm water, not cold. Mix it up and give it to them the first couple days, and then after that, once you know for sure that they're nice and strong and healthy, you can go to just regular warm water. So all of their main supplies is out in the old rabbit hutch because I was planning on having them in there. I just put them in here real quick to let them warm up while I got everything situated. So they'll hang out in here. I'll go get a better setup for them, and then tomorrow we'll try to introduce them to honeysuckle again. Oh, and if you're using a heat lamp, put it on one side of the container so that way they can go to the other side to get cool. And again, this is too small. I'm gonna go get a better one for them in the meantime. I just didn't want them without a light while I got that situated. And some signs to look out for: if they're really huddled together constantly, that means they're too cold. If they're laying on their sides and panting, they're too hot. So that's why you want to have it on just half of the enclosure so they can go back and forth as they need to. They all seem pretty comfortable since they're all peeping and moving around and eating and drinking, so that's a good sign. And for the first week, you want to keep them at about 95 degrees Fahrenheit, and then each passing week you can decrease that by 5 degrees. I'll show you real quick what the electrolyte and probiotic packets look like that I mixed in their water. Alright, we are back for an update. So, Agerham Lincoln, the egg, is getting really close to hatching. It's going to hatch either tomorrow, maybe Friday. So we've just been leaving it alone. Incubator's on lockdown. Humidity is at 70%, right where we need it to be. So that's going to be exciting. Soon we'll have this. And I can add it to the other chicks downstairs. And I have them settled in now, so let's go look at them. And I'll show you another heating option. Alright, so here is another enclosure for them. This one's larger. And it's enclosed, which I like because it'll keep it extra safe. Even though the door is shut to this room and the dogs can't get in, I just always like to be extra cautious. So I'm going to put them in here. Now, for the bedding, you can use a couple different things. I use pine because, like I mentioned earlier, it really helps with the smell. And it's really soft and comfortable for them. But you could also use paper towels. Some people use newspaper if you're on a tight budget, so you can do that. Some people use sand, and I do use sand in the main coop, but I don't use it for the babies. Now, this, I'm just feeling the bottom of it to make sure it's heating up properly. It looks like it has. This is a heating plate. I got this on Amazon. Now, some people swear by this and say it's way better than the heat lamps, and one pro about this compared to the heat lamp is that there's a very small fire risk with this, whereas with the heat lamp, if you do use that, you want to make sure that you use zip ties and you attach it to something, because even though it comes with a clamp, there's the clamp. I always think it's better to be safe rather than sorry, so make sure if you go with the heat lamp, you secure it to something else with some zip ties. Make sure it's extra safe. And then it also has this on it, which if the bulb for some reason came loose, this would catch it and protect it. And make sure you have that in place. But if you want to go with the heat plate, this one kind of, basically it just mimics the mama hen. So they would go under here just like they would go under the mother hen. They'll get warm and then they can come out as they want to, walk around, explore, eat, drink, and then when they get cold again, they'll go back under here. I have heard some people say there's more of a risk of burns with this one just because they're directly touching it. So if you are going to go with the heat plate, just make sure you read plenty of reviews and monitor it very closely. Go ahead and test it out before you get the chicks. Feel it, make sure it's not getting too hot. Put a thermometer under there. I've used both before. I've used heat lamps in the past, and I've used this, and I've had really good success with both, honestly. So the cons of this one, I did not like how the chicks would perch on this as they grew, and they would just stand on here and they would poop all over it, and it was a pain to clean. Now you can see you can raise this as the chicks grow. You just put these in the different holes, make it a little bit taller, but they still find a way to get on top of it. So I did not like it for that. So the heat lamp wins when it comes to cleanliness. But then what I don't like about the heat lamp is, like I said, there's that small increased risk of fire hazard with it, and it makes the room just really hot. So do your research on both and see which one you think would work better for you and your situation. Oh, and you can see that one's stretching out and laying down. Don't panic when you see that. Remember, chicks are babies, and just like human babies, they need a lot of sleep. So don't panic if they're just walking around and fall over and take a nap. Sometimes they fall asleep in their food bowl. Obviously, you don't want them to fall asleep in their water, so keep an eye on that. And if you're not using a water made specifically for chicks, and if you're going to use a dish, make sure you put some stones or some marbles in it, so that way it's not too deep, because you don't want them to accidentally drown in it. So don't be alarmed if they're taking a nap. Now, if they're acting lethargic, and if you wake them up and they don't perk up and they're not eating and drinking regularly, then you should be concerned. But just regular naps, no big deal. At work, we always have customers that see the baby chicks taking naps, and they're like, oh my god, it's dead! But 9 times out of 10, they're fine. So we're going to move them into here and see how they like the heat plate and how they like their bigger enclosure. And you do kind of have to show them what to do the first day. And you don't want to like stress them out and like play with them or anything too much on the first day, but you do need to monitor them just to make sure that they're settling in well and that they're healthy. I've heard that Cackle Hatchery has some really, really good bloodlines of birds and that they have really beautiful eggs. So I'm excited to see what kind of eggs they lay when they grow up. It's like a little clubhouse down there for them. And they're all really active. They've all been eating, going to the bathroom, drinking. So it looks like they're a nice, healthy little batch of chicks. And it seems like they're very happy. Oh, and you can kind of see some dust on this one. It shows up because its feathers or its down feathers are so dark. One downside, if you use the pine shavings, they're pretty dusty. So that's something to keep in mind. You're going to have to dust your room a little bit more often that they're staying in. But it really does help with the smell. And I do recommend cleaning out your chicken closer at least once a day. So Honeysuckle's out there. She is in the hutch. She seems settled in now. I'm not going to pressure her. I'm not going to give her the chicks. I might try again tomorrow. We'll play it by ear and see how she's doing out there. If she's not happy out there or doesn't accept them, I'll just put her back in the regular coop and I'll just keep them in here and take care of them. It's no big deal. It's nice to have these different options and it's nice to show you guys different ways to do it. So we'll check back in tomorrow, see how they're doing, check on Honeysuckle, and see if the egg has started to hatch. And I do have a whole separate series on that too, by the way, so make sure you check that out. Look, it's day 2 and this chick already learned how to jump up there. So Honeysuckle is still broody, but she's still just obsessing over her nesting box, and she gets really confused because if you put the chicks in the nesting box with her, she loves them, she tries to put them under herself, she talks to them, she bonds with them. But obviously I can't leave them loose in the coop because the other chickens could accidentally hurt them, or since they're so tiny, these guys could get lost if I just left them loose out there. So anytime I try to put them somewhere more confined with Honeysuckle, she gets confused and panics and tries to escape and runs right back to her nest and sits on it. So it's like she thinks that these are different chicks when I put them somewhere else. She's not the brightest. Mimosa was a lot easier, so I guess I just assumed that they would all be as easy as Mimosa was when it comes to being broody and taking care of chicks. But the Silky is not quite as experienced as Mimosa. So I might try again in a couple days, to make sure you subscribe so you can follow up with that in case it works out. I'll show you how it works. We're going to have some really bad weather the next couple days, so I'm going to wait till that blows over, but in the meantime, they're fine in here. To check back to follow their development and their growth and for more care tips.